We explore the essentials of maintaining movement habits with the insightful Dr. Laura Kummerle. Ever wondered what sneaky villains are lurking in your everyday foods or struggled to get back on track after a major life change? We've got you covered. Get ready for a journey that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about health, wellness, and everything in between. Trust us, you won't want to miss this deep dive into self-care, injury recovery, and toxin avoidance.
The Discovery Doc Podcast, where your journey to empowered, non-toxic living begins. Join me, Dr. CeCe, a doctor of nursing practice, self-proclaimed toxin tamer, and mama of four, alongside
me, Annah Kate, your medical mystery overachiever. Together, we'll uncover the latest in functional medicine, debunk health myths, tame toxins, and provide practical tips for thriving in a modern world.
Get ready to take control of your health with expert insights, raw stories, and actionable wellness strategies designed to help you and your family lead vibrant, toxin-free lives.
Let's discover together. Welcome back to the Discovery Doc Podcast. We are continuing our conversation with Dr. Laura today, and we've got some things about what happens. We want to pick her brain about what happens when you fall off the wagon, when you
you crash. You crash and burn off the wagon.
Because you've overdone your adrenals, your cortisol's through the roof, and you're not making progress and you're frustrated. Like what happens, or pregnancy, when you got to get back into it. So
yes.
What you asked the question.
So we know all the reasons and all the excuses, but what are some of the reasons that you see, the biggest reasons you see people, quote unquote, falling off the bandwagon when it comes to movement?
I honestly think life things pop up, other priorities happen, and then it becomes more so like an all or nothing mentality, where it's like, if I can't get your normal amount of movement in, if you can't work out the same way, then I'm not going to do anything. Whereas if we can do something that's going to be beneficial, however it looks, based on whatever reason that you stopped in the first place, whether it was an injury, whether it was time, whether it was life stresses, meet yourself with where you're at, and then you can address those things and move on and ease back into things very easily. But again, something's better than nothing with that.
So I think let's maybe talk about two kind of big categories. One is injury, and two is just life. And we can, in that life category, yes, we can put, okay, or did you have a hard pregnancy and postpartum? Like that, this is me. It's been 9 months now, and I tried to start a couple weeks ago, and then life happened, and I was really proud of myself that 2 weeks, and now it's like the ebb and flow of, yay, I'm so proud of myself, and then and it just gets you down, and then you can't sustain it. So we'll talk about injury in a second, but in terms of whether it's just life, work, stress, maybe you just don't feel good, whatever it is,
yeah, it's not like you're busy or anything.
No, okay, but I could still, like Dr. Laura's been saying, I could still like get up and go and do things and not do an hour workout, but in my brain I'm like, ooh, can't go to hot work. So there we go. So where do you even start in someone who's fallen so far off that it's been, let's say, months, or maybe it's been even a year since you've done a full workout?
It really depends on the individual. It could be as simple as, I'm going to go outside and go on a 5-minute walk, or I'm going to walk in circles around my house because it's too cold outside or something like that. Like, it can be going up and down the stairs an extra, couple times each time you go up and down. It could be every time you go into a room, maybe you do a push-up on the counter. Anything can be included, and depends on what the specific reason is. Is it because you have a newborn? Maybe just including some sort of something, maybe while you're feeding or something like that, maybe doing some diaphragmatic breathing. Like even something like that can help from a movement standpoint. It could be doing some isometrics while you're sitting there, aka maybe potentially doing like a TA set for your core. Little things like that it really just depends on the individual, I guess. Right. But those little things make a big difference.
Can you elaborate on the isometric or the core a little bit for those who don't know what that means?
Yeah, so basically your core is made up of different muscles, obviously. So you have your diaphragm on the top, your pelvic floor on the bottom, your like traditional core muscles in the front, and then you have your back muscles in the back. The transverse abdominis kind of wraps around, and it's one of our deepest core muscles, and it kind of acts like a mini corset to help control intra-abdominal pressure. So it's deeper than your like six-pack abs, so your rectus abdominis. It's deeper than your obliques. And basically, if you can isolate that, that's a good foundation to build off of, and making sure you have your pressure controlled, because basically that's all the core is. It's pretty much like acting as a box, and as you move, it's building up pressure, and you want to be able to control that with your core muscles. And especially pregnancy, postpartum, you have to fit a baby in there. So things get stretched. And so that's where like diastasis and things like that play a role, and some like pelvic floor dysfunction. We had some trauma down there, depending on the delivery and things like that. Regardless, part of your core through pregnancy and through the delivery was impacted. So we do need to rebuild that and make sure you're controlling the pressure well. And a TA set or just isolating that movement is going to be a good place to start.
So what are exercises? Sorry, what are some of those exercises?
So it's probably going to start with something like diaphragmatic breathing. And then you can add, it's really hard to explain, and I will have to double check this, but I think I have a YouTube video going on like basics of core control. So
we'll
that's a place.
If you find that,
yeah.
We'll link it below.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I have that. I also have it's in more depth in my app as well, but I have like a series of videos going over this. But like if you place your fingers on your hip bones, so like, and then you go in maybe an inch or so, if you cough or sneeze or something like that, you're going to feel a muscle kind of like pop up into your hands. And this is very hard to isolate, and you're going to potentially find it easier in one position versus another. So I like to start kind of laying on my back with my knees bent, and then basically as you're just going to think about basically drawing your two hip bones together. And that's I guess the best cue that I could, and it's a very, very small contraction. If you feel something popping up into your hands, you're trying too hard. It should just be a slight tensioning underneath your fingers that you're going to feel. And that's the TA isolation. Okay. It's really hard to do at first. And then you can include it in things like pelvic tilts, which are tucking the hips under. Then you can go like onto your hands and your knees and like do an arm leg lift, and like laying on your back, you can do heel slides and like bent knee fallouts and things like that. And then you can incorporate that into side planks and more functional things. But it's starting with that foundation and rebuilding it from there.
What is the movement? Have you seen this where you can like massage your intestines by flexing your inner? You know what I'm talking about?
So yes, I do. So that's a type of vacuum.
Okay.
And it's more popular in yoga. The interesting thing is there's like no research on this at all. I tried to find it and I could not. But after being stubborn for a while and finally being like, okay, I'm going to try it, because that was like, there's no research on it. Like, it's pointless. So I was like, I'm going to do it every day for a month and see how, like, it, you know, if I notice any changes. And this is just me personally, again, no research on the topic. But like I do have some gut issues, and I've noticed better connection with my core, better digestion and things like that. So that's another thing that's in my app. I did a video on vacuums, but
how to do that, because that's hard to get the control of figuring. I'll have to show you a video.
I think I know what you're talking about, but it makes sense because Dr. Laura said like our core is essentially a vacuum and kind of or a pressure like system. And so it makes sense if you are doing like a vacuum type movement or whatever it might be, that you are recalibrating that pressure.
That's the potential way to think about it. But basically, like start out with just like a basic vacuum, and then you can add that movement in. I'm more in the video kind of talk about the vacuum itself, and then adding mobility to be able to stretch out your abdominal muscles in different ways. And like, I've also noticed an improvement in like the mobility through my like trunk.
Well, body awareness, that's a hard thing to connect. Just getting that vacuum in the
yes.
hard enough.
Yeah.
And then, you know, adding in those stretches and things. So
but
I was just curious.
It's so important though, and it's so hard. Like if you've never been taught how to engage certain part, like I only went through because I had an awesome pelvic floor therapist, postpartum and to just help with that. And it is so hard. I had to think about every single movement, just engaging kind of my deep core. And I couldn't do any movement outside of that for a very long time because I would release it. I would lose it. And so that progression is so important, I think, to understanding, okay, what am I engaging? And then is it staying engaged as then I incorporate this movement on top of that, kind of like the arms and legs that you were saying. But it can be really hard for someone who's never done it before.
Yeah, and it's very easy to overlook the importance of those things and just be like, I can do this, so why not? So a lot of times, like, I'm just gonna kind of pick on CrossFit a little bit right now, but they do toes to bar and things like that. But you can see like people coming back postpartum, maybe they're like coning or doming and it's not necessarily the safest, and it's going back to those foundations. And just because you can do the toes to bar doesn't necessarily mean that you should at this point in time. You can definitely build up to it. And same thing with like jump roping and leakage and things like that. That is common but not normal, and we need to address the basics and then slowly progress to be able to get back to those things. I'm not saying you can never do that, but it's important with those basic things. And I know they're really boring, but they can be important to get back to where you need.
I totally agree, because I do think, especially with something like CrossFit, there's so much room to do movements, but not do them correctly. And that just is me personally, because I found myself doing this. I cannot do a strict pull-up. I can't, never been able to do it. Like, look at these things. My wingspan is like ridiculous. Anyways, but I could absolutely do 20 kipping pull-ups, but it wasn't strength. It was just me. It was momentum and physics. And there was no engagement there whatsoever. I was just swinging, that's it. And so I would get done with that and almost feel like it was part of a workout. I'd be like, it didn't do anything. I'm not engaging any sort of muscle. There's no control here, but I can do it. And I did them.
And that's where having a good coach will come into play, because they'll make you do the strict version before the kipping version. And the kipping version is more of like a skill to basically get through the sport of CrossFit faster and like get the circuits done faster. But typically a good coach will make sure you do the strict version before the kipping version.
How important is posture in an overall foundation of like just healthy mobility?
So there's no one perfect posture. Your next posture is your best posture, and the ability to get into and out of different positions is going to be the most important. So you don't necessarily need to always be sitting upright, because what happens if you're always in this position, then you get stuck in this position. You can't bend forward to grab something. You can't move as life would require. So it's really the moving throughout the day, switching different positions and things like that. But there's no one best posture, like everyone else.
Yeah.
I like that answer.
I do too, and that's something with my daughter that we are trying to do is, okay, for how much backbend she's in, like she reads in child's pose. She reads just, like in a different position just to kind of counteract. And that's, I felt like age appropriate, correct me if I'm wrong, but I felt like that was a good just implementation of, okay, you just got done with 3 hours of back walkovers and back whatevers. I can't intelligently talk about gymnastics, I'm sorry. But to just counteract that, okay, go read in child's pose. And so I don't know, is that okay?
I mean, that's fine as long as she's comfortable with it. The thing is, it's more probably like in gymnastics, you're going to be moving throughout different patterns. Like you're going to go into a pike, aka like a forward fold. So you're flexing the spine as well. Eventually she's going to get into twisting movements and things like that. So she's going to pass through different movements in it. Gymnastics does kind of, with tumbling especially, like bias the back bending a little bit, but just moving in different ways and making sure she's moving well throughout the whole entire body and not just the back. So really what she's comfortable with and just making sure she's moving.
Yeah, so we talked that kind of one side of maybe falling off the bandwagon of just life. What about falling off the bandwagon due to injury? Do you have any differing advice on kind of that side of the planet, whether it's, 6 weeks, 8 weeks post an injury, or maybe we just never get back on the bandwagon after an injury and now it's been, 6 months since we've done anything?
So there are very, very, very few injuries, I would say, or situations where you have to completely stop all movement. It's going to be tailoring it to whatever your injury might be. So I'll use an example in 2020, I had to have shoulder surgery. So I wasn't able to use my arm. It was in a sling for 6 weeks, 4 weeks. And basically it was, I think like day 1 or 2 post-op. Like I obviously had supervision because I was like still a little loopy from pain meds, but I was on a stationary bike, just getting some sort of movement in. We went on walks. I did core workouts and I did some like body weight leg movements and things like that. And obviously like making sure safety was considered with balance. Like obviously you don't want to do something that'll challenge you and you might fall, because that would obviously be jarring to the injury or the area that's injured. But considering what you're working with, and you can do other things. So if it's a lower body injury, you can still do upper body. Typically you can do core. If you have a question about it, or if you're not sure, ask a physical therapist, or ask your physical therapist, even better, because they know your specific situation. But there's tons of things that you can do. Even if it might just be walking, it might just be riding a bike, it might be, you could swim. A lot of people don't think about swimming, because as long as you don't have like an open wound or something like that, it's a really low impact way to get moving. And typically like a warmer pool is going to be more comfortable as well. So if you're in the South in the summer, you have all the options. But even some community pools, especially if they have an aquatic therapy program nearby or something like that, the pool is typically going to be a little bit warmer. So even looking at those types of things too.
Yeah, I love that, because that is more preventative in nature also. It's you're preventing yourself from becoming stagnant to then have to get back on the bandwagon, but also medically it will help you recover faster. You know, that a lot of us, I think, when we are injured, we take that as, okay, I'm going to potato couch it and just veg, and that will actually prolong the recovery time, especially post-surgery, and kind of detoxing that anesthesia out. The best thing you can do is get moving and get that, you know, gone. So for multiple reasons, I love that.
Have you ever taken a water aerobics class, a mermaid class?
I have, and it's the hardest freaking
They
thing.
are. They're
Oh
so
my
hard.
gosh, it's so hard. We did it. I was on one of my best friends' bachelorette trips in like Cancun, and we decided to do an 8 a.m. of water aerobics class, and there's like 12 of us with matching bathing suits, and I'm like, who decided to do this? It was so hard, and there was a bike in the water too.
Yeah.
It was so hard.
They're hard enough to teach on the side, because you're having to do the workout and showing them how to do it under the water, and you have to do it with them, so you're still getting a workout.
It was so
as well. It's
hard.
crazy.
My legs were burning, man. It was so hard. So
if you haven't taken a water aerobics class, go take one. Give yourself a challenge
and let us know how you like it. Okay. Deep dive question here on this segment with Dr. Laura. What is, so one kind of singular, we touched on this a little bit, but one single piece of advice for someone who has, like, let's say you have a typical regimen that you're used to following and just life has happened. What is one singular piece of advice that you would give yourself or somebody else?
Meet yourself with where you're at, where your body and mind are at that given time, and then start small and build momentum from there. So just meeting yourself with where you're at, giving yourself a lot of grace, and you're not necessarily starting over, but you can think about it as you're starting over, and this is your new starting point, and building from there, not necessarily comparing to where you were beforehand, but it's starting from there and building.
Yes, there's so much importance in that, especially for some people who are used to being at a certain place. And then you go into a workout, maybe you haven't worked out or moved in 6 months, and you're like, I'm expecting to be able to back squat 150 pounds. And you're like, whoa, 20. Yeah. 20 is hard. Like, you have to respect that about yourself and give yourself some grace and know that each day, you know, you will progress and move forward. But to be imperfect is perfect, in my opinion.
Perfectly imperfect.
Imperfect.
No one is perfect, and that in itself is perfect.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, join us next week as we continue our conversation with Dr. Laura and wrap up on her perspective on how to navigate through movement during the holidays with all the fun stuff coming up. So make sure that you join us here next week. And if you have a burning question for us or for Dr. Laura, please go to thediscoverydoc.com/podcast, and you can leave us a voice memo, or you can type it out and ask your question that way. We'll make sure that we get those questions answered.
This Thanksgiving season, we invite you to join us in expressing gratitude and thankfulness. Share with us what you're grateful for, and let's celebrate the abundance in our lives. Here are 2 ways to participate. Get your submissions in by November 21st. Number 1, leave us a voice memo. Visit the Discovery Doc website at thediscoverydoc.com and navigate to the podcast page. Record and submit your voice memo sharing what you are thankful for. Number 2 is send us an email. Compose an email to info@thediscoverydoc.com detailing the things in your life that you're grateful for. We'd love to hear from you. By sharing your gratitude with us, you're not only spreading positivity, but also inspiring others to reflect on the blessing in their own lives. Thank you for being a part of our community and for celebrating the spirit of Thanksgiving with us.
We're continuing our exploration of the toxin tamer toxin, BHA and BHT. We're examining why it's crucial to be aware of toxins and their impact on your health and well-being. Dr. CeCe, why should we address this specific toxin?
So as we've kind of said, these toxins it's just one, but it is important because every little change that we can make in terms of our daily consumption or daily exposure, that matters. And so knowing, maybe not understanding the full depths of why these things are harmful, but just understanding that, hey, I'm reading these labels and saying, hey, I heard this somewhere that this might not be the best for me, so I'm going to switch it. That's the important part here. So I don't want to overwhelm you with all of the data about these two, but just a take home point of, hey, I recognize that word. It's something I should avoid. So let me find a better option. But in terms of these two directly, why these are preservatives that have been studied for a very long time, and they have been labeled as, quote, anticipated to be a human hazard since 2011. Since 2011, we've known that this is potentially harmful towards humans, and it's been studied. They've been studied for their carcinogenic properties, i.e. cancer causing, due to these chemicals actually causing cancer in animals, in rats, mice, and hamsters in terms of research. And so that's where that label anticipated as a human hazard came to play almost 15 years ago. And that concern is extensive. It's cause for organ toxicity in terms of liver, kidney, and lung, bioaccumulation. So again, it's not just that one-off, but you consume it and it kind of stays in your system, and then we consume it again and again and again. And that's where the threat kind of comes from, is that bioaccumulation over time. It has been shown to cause tumors to form, to disrupt our endocrine system, which means it can impact our testosterone levels, our fertility levels, our sperm quality and quantity. It mimics estrogen. So for women, this can impact our reproductive health and our menstrual cycles, and has been linked with developmental delays. The literature is there supporting the fact that these two chemicals are harmful for humans, which is exactly why it's banned in the European Union, Japan, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. But here in the US, we're like, hey, free for all. Let's put it in our foods and in our packaging and our cosmetics for everyone, kids and their mom and their grandma, to be exposed to. It's wild to me. It's absolutely wild.
Yeah, we need to be ahead of the curve, not behind the curve. But big petroleum likes to get their fingers in the pot.
She said it, not me. I mean, it's crazy. So when I was just looking stuff up with BHA and BHT, just to get more of the science behind how it's made, if you literally look up how is BHA made, just type that into your Google, whatever, into your phone. It gives you the reaction, the chemical reaction, and then says, quote, and I'm reading this, quote, "It's effective at preventing oxidation and staleness in food, which improves shelf life. However, BHA is toxic if ingested and has been shown to be carcinogenic in animals." So they literally give you, hey, yes, it's good at stabilizing food and increasing the shelf life, but it is absolutely toxic if ingested.
Why did this get approved to be in foods and cosmetics and medication? That big word in that sentence is however. Yes. However, don't consume it, don't touch it, don't get around it, don't breathe it, just don't.
Toxic if ingested. But here we are literally putting it in all our foods. I'm sorry, what? Google told me that, okay? You don't need a degree. You don't need anything else. Google says that. But we here are just gobbling it up.
Yeah, if you didn't go listen to our last month's episodes in September, go talk. We talk about the FDA and yeah, so just go listen. We explore that just a little bit more. So on our next episode, we're gonna wrap up this discussion and show you how to ditch and switch and pick better products. So we are so lucky in this day and age that we do get the freedom of choice. There are alternatives and there are things that are still good for us that, Cinnamon Toast Crunch was like, I loved it. I ate a bunch of it as a little kid. I'm so glad that BHT was not in it when I was a little kid. So, but now we have the option to switch to something else. So we're going to give you all of that information next week. So stay tuned and join us again next week. But keep your finger on the pulse of health and wellness. Subscribe to the Discovery Podcast and enable notifications to stay informed and inspired in every latest episode. In this installment of Medical Myth Busting, prepare to have your beliefs challenged and your knowledge expanded as we expose the reality behind those persistent health myths. All right, so this week, we are going to talk about such a controversy that raw milk is dangerous.
I'm sorry. I have to just laugh at that one. I do. It's so backwards. It's so like, what has happened in the history of this country that has allowed us to fear the foods that God put on this planet and not fear the chemicals that fill the quote unquote food in the stores?
Ooh, call on me. I know. Big agriculture and big food.
Yes. Yes. It is so mind-blowing. It's mind-blowing. And I know it's been a process and it's happened over a long period of time. But when we can be comfortable going into the store and buying a bag of chips and you turn it around and it literally doesn't have anything you can pronounce, or it's contained bioengineered foods, which means everything in it is made in a lab instead of outside, but yet we fear a natural whole food. Like what? It doesn't make sense. So let's read a Google quote here that I came across that would explain if you were to Google, is raw milk bad? This is what Google would tell you. Quote, raw milk can be dangerous because it can contain harmful bacteria that can cause serious illness, hospitalization, or even death. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, so I have a bone to pick with this because great, wonderful. But what about all the listeria and salmonella and E. coli outbreaks that occur in produce and deli meat literally all the time? Things are being recalled from shelves, but we aren't labeling those foods as deadly at all. Does it not happen all the time? Every other week, like some sort of produce is being recalled.
Yeah, I got food poisoning from that listeria outbreak on romaine lettuce a couple of years ago. I went to go and help my brother with my nephews when they were little bitty, and he ended up having to take care of all of us. I went to my favorite place and had a salad, and it was like I go to the same place. It's called Coffee Rainy, and it's this Greek salad and it's wonderful. And I've been eating it since I was a little kid. And so it kind of ruined me on it for a minute, but I went back and ate it the next time I went. But like it happens all the time. Okay, here's this other thing is that if you leave a pasteurized gallon of milk on the counter for 15 minutes, it doubles in bacteria every 15 minutes. Why isn't that on the label of pasteurized milk?
Right.
You can get sick from drinking pasteurized milk too. This is not a thing.
It's not a thing. It's absolutely not a thing. And if we look at some stats with foodborne illnesses, let's just look at some stats, okay? Leafy greens in America causes 2.1 million cases of foodborne illnesses per year, okay? Turkey sandwiches, 120,000 cases per year. Cooked rice, 63,000 cases per year. Why? Because it's just a breeding ground for bacteria when you use it as leftovers. Raw milk, 1,000 cases per year. Okay, so I will justify something here that not as many people are drinking raw milk as eating turkey sandwiches, let's say. So those ratios are going to be a little bit flip-flopped or off. But I will take the risk, quote unquote risk, with the raw milk over a freaking turkey sandwiches because raw milk is something that is a complete natural food that contains more amino acids, antimicrobials, vitamins, minerals, and fatty acids than pasteurized milk. More specifically, and I think this is like a really, this is something that not enough people realize, is that pasteurized milk, you are taking milk from the cow, right? You are stripping it of its organic natural properties and then synthetically replacing them with, again, synthetic versions, where raw milk contains nutrients in their actual natural form, the form that we were meant to consume them in, including calcium, iron, vitamins A, D, K, phosphorus, and zinc, rather than the synthetically fortified versions. So I find that even patients who are, or people who are lactose intolerant and have, high histamine levels as relates to allergies or asthma, that the bacteria, the actual good commensal bacteria in raw milk, helps to produce lactase, which is the enzyme that breaks down milk in the intestines. And so these patients who are super intolerant to pasteurized milk can actually tolerate raw milk better. And kind of to boot with that, that good bacteria that's, again, naturally occurring in our raw milk that we just love to strip out is also really supportive of our gut health and our immune function. And so you're missing all of that. You're getting rid of all of those key components by stripping that milk of its natural goodness and creating a synthetic version that's highly inflammatory. And then, pediatricians are out here saying that kids need it to grow because of the synthetic vitamins in it.
Yeah. So that God is so smart. So there was a group of scientists at one point that they all got together and decided that they were going to create something out of nothing. They were gonna do it better. So they all got together and got around, and they were picking all their pieces and all the stuff and figuring out what they wanted to do. And then they went outside and they got some dirt. And God came into the meeting and said, "Get your own dirt. I created this. You can't create something from nothing. That's my job." And he is so smart in how he created our food source and our bodies to process it all. And I always think about that every time, we like, why do you need bleached flour? Why do you need no, I mean, yes, it makes it pretty, but it doesn't make it more nutrient dense and bioavailable for the things that your body needs to actually function on. And eating broken food makes us broken, makes us sick. It blows my mind how intricate and intuitive that God made our bodies and food that comes from out of the ground or off the hoof. It's just amazing that we're just designed to function better on things that come, just like there's one thing that happens in between it getting on our plate and not 500 things.
Exactly. And it's so backwards in our country that I will actually have patients who are upset when we go through kind of everything and we do all the gut healing and all the inflammatory work, and they want to go eat a bag of Doritos. And they're like, "Well, I can't eat that now. It upsets my stomach and I want to be able to eat those things." And I'm like, dude, I'm going to be honest with you. That's not my expectation here, because none of us are meant to process those foods because it's not food. We can't process things that are not foods. So, or that, those are chemicals that our body is working so hard to break down and not obtaining any nutrients from, that I'm sorry, I'm not mad that your body is rejecting those Doritos. If we have a natural, more, close to the earth version of those Doritos, then, my ears are perked to what's going on. But I'm not mad if we do all this work and now your body is like, dude, no, don't spoil me here. Bring it back to basics. We aren't meant to metabolize those things. We are meant to metabolize raw milk. We all are meant to metabolize raw butter. And somehow over the years, the food industry has come in and said, no, these things are bad. You're not meant to do this, and convinced us that the stuff in the stores that, like you said, AK, goes through, 47 steps to get into our bellies is better for us.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I'm a true firm believer of that. And I remember when I was little that McDonald's fries tasted so good because they were cooked in beef tallow. And when they changed it, I haven't had McDonald's in, I don't know, 25 years. I mean, like a long time. And I'm not a big fast food person either. I mean, every now and then I'll get something if we're on a trip, but it's not my favorite. I will pick something else. But when it's simple and there's not a ton of ingredients, the better it tastes and the better it is for you. Your body knows what it wants. And all of the synthetic, like, so fortified cereals, we talked about this in our Toxin Tamer section, that if you have to strip all the stuff out of the actual food that it's initially created with and then put synthetic vitamins back in, your body doesn't know what to do with a synthetic vitamin. So you just pee it out. So eating cereal to get your fortified vitamins and get a dose of vitamins is not a thing. Like, that doesn't happen. Your body just pees it out because they're chemicals. Your body doesn't know what to do with them. So they can't metabolize and use them to nourish your body.
Exactly. What she said.
All the things. Okay. So I know you get your raw milk locally.
Yes.
So for those that may not have a farmer's market or have a trusted source, I know you get your beef and your eggs and your pork locally. What's the deal with getting raw milk or starting with raw cheese?
Yeah, I think two things there. Number one is because our country is so backwards, it's always going to say not for human consumption.
You can get it for your dogs, though.
Raw milk is not for human consumption, y'all. But you can get it from your animals. Yeah. So even at my local place that we get it from, on the bottle, it says not for human consumption. So I would say if it's something that you're interested in, there has to be, I've actually not looked into this, but where we get our meat from, they deliver, I mean, across state lines. So there's got to be a farm that has the option to deliver that to you. You can, if you get raw milk, it is so easy to make your own raw butter. It is so easy and so much more cost effective. You just whip it up and then put salt to taste that you want, and you can freeze it and it'll last forever. So you can make your own. But the same places that we get our raw milk usually have raw butter. There's a lot of Amish communities, honestly, who do it and will ship out too. So it's just a matter of kind of looking at what's available to you in the Southeast. There are tons of places in North Georgia, in Tennessee, in North Carolina that will either ship to you or you can get it locally.
Beautiful. I'm going to get you on the cold butter train. It's really good when you slice it thin and put it in the freezer, and then it's like crunchy. Like,
so I know I've started to put it on my toast, like a little bit thicker. So I put a ton on my toast, and it's just to the point where it's probably like half an inch thick. And like right now, texture wise, that's all I can handle. But I'm like, I love it because I know how good it is for my body, and my body feels so much better on it. And even things like in terms of postpartum, getting periods back, the better fats I eat, the more regular it becomes. Like, you guys, these things are so important. These good fats are so important for our body. Don't fear them, but make sure they're quality sourced.
Yeah. So before we come on and record and I get my brain working, I eat a stick of butter. So just FYI.
If she didn't, God, bless our souls here.
I know it's real hard. That Swiss cheese brain's is firing, not on all 4 cylinders if I don't. So, all right. Until next time, let's
discover together. I was waiting for you.
This is so hard. Okay.
Because I could see you, so I was waiting for you.
It's all good. Well, yeah. Until next time, we'll discover all this together. You know, all the things. So next week we are going to talk about dark chocolate because Ava, the glorious Ava, gave us an incredible question. So make sure you tune in next week, and we will bust some myths about dark chocolate. But get the inside scoop on Dr. CeCe's top seasonal recommendations. Join our mailing list at thediscoverydoc.com for exclusive access to our must-have health products and swaps delivered directly to your inbox. What an eye-opening episode we've had, from Dr. Laura's invaluable advice on reclaiming your exercise routine to unveiling the dark side of preservatives like BHA and BHT. We've covered it all. Remember, this journey toward better health is about progress, not perfection. Don't forget to join our mailing list at thediscoverydoc.com for exclusive insights and health product swaps. Next time, stay curious and keep discovering. We navigate the vast ocean of health information. Let's pause for a brief disclaimer. The content of this podcast is intended for general, informational, and entertainment purposes only. While we're thrilled to be your Discovery Doc crewmates, we're not here to replace your doctor or healthcare provider. Think of us as your fellow sailors on the journey to better health, sharing our knowledge and experiences. Remember, always consult a qualified medical professional before taking any action based on the content of this podcast. Like a sailing adventure, this disclaimer may change occasionally, so be sure to check back for updates. Stay healthy, stay curious, and keep sailing with the Discovery Doc.